Hi, my name is Blake Hellaby. This is Daily Music Tips brought to you by Cape Town Music Academy. I'm going to be talking to you today about learning to improvise without using licks. It's so common that the first thing we are taught is to learn licks, transcribe other musicians, and learn them in all 12 keys, which is a great tool to have, of course. But another approach that I feel is often neglected when learning to improvise is learning to outline just the chords, learning to only play the four notes of a quartet or the three notes of a triad. Um, what this has allowed me to do is be able to adjust my improvisation to many different styles of music without having to relearn and rethink and reshape my ideas, thoughts, and all of those things. Especially when we're wanting to play many genres. If you can play the chords, you can't play wrong because everything is made up of chords. So, for instance, I would take 2/5 progression going through all 12 keys and just play the four notes of each chord. Or I would just take progressions like 1 to 4 in the blues, going from 1 to 4 and back to 1, or 1 to 5 and back to 1, or random progressions like, let's say, C dominant 7th to E dominant 7th. How would I approach going to that in one bar, going over that between those two chords in 2 bars, 3 bars, 4 bars, and just trying to figure that out. At first, it doesn't sound really nice because you're limited to 4 notes. You're limited to notes that aren't necessarily melodic, they're just functional. But with enough practice and enough determination, you can really make them into music eventually. And obviously, that is just the starting process, and then you build on that by adding semitones, adding new scales, adding two things. But a really important way to learn anything is to limit yourself. There's so many things you can do when learning to improvise. There's a billion scales, a billion chords, a billion approaches, a billion different thought processes of the greatest musicians we all love. But I find that the most effective way to learn is to hone in on one thing and focus on that and expand. And then find a new thing, focus on that, just the main thing. So for me, most of my practice, even today, is based around 4 notes per chord. And I expand from that. So how I might approach that is taking a 2/5 progression in one key and just playing around with that, only using the 4 notes of each chord. And at first, you'll just play them as it is. And the next progression over that is to start anticipating or delaying the resolutions. So I'll be playing, say D minor 7 for 4 beats, and maybe a quaver before G is supposed to land, I'll play maybe a B, just anticipating it. Or when I'm resolving from G to C major 7, I might not resolve as quickly. I'll still be playing G over maybe a beat, half a beat. And that is a way to create interest with just these 4 notes. And you quickly realize how you can develop these ideas. This might sound something like this. So that's a basic way to do it. And I'll do it with different chord progressions. I'd go maybe just going up in cycles of fifths, so C7 to G7 to D7, etc., or fourths or thirds, or just weird stuff. You just find different ways of approaching different chord progressions that you might find in pieces. So not thinking of one particular piece in mind when you're learning to improvise, but rather approaching situations you might find in songs. Even pop progressions, and whatever you feel you want to look at. What this then does is prepare you for any situation. And so there's many times I get called for a gig where I haven't had enough rehearsals, or I don't know the song and I don't know the chords properly. But this has allowed me to not have to think too hard and to just be able to play the chords and find the easiest way out to make sure I got to the gig and didn't sound bad. It allows versatility. A very good way to approach this is also to work it through the blues in all 12 keys, because the blues progression, you kind of find most of the most common chord progressions in any music, and so this is how it might sound in the blues. So that's my approach to learning to improvise, and you do that through all the 12 keys. I didn't play my left hand so that you could just read what I was doing there. And very simple. The slower you practice it, the better you can think ahead and approach this concept. But with enough practice, it can still sound like music. And after you've started to really get comfortable with this approach to playing, you can apply it to all sorts of styles of genre, not just swing or whatever. And you'll be able to apply the licks now that you've learned, the bebop scales, the blues scales, whatever you want to do on top of this. But this is a great foundation to play and improvise over anything. So I'm going to show you how I might approach the same concept with maybe just a few more extra notes of a different style. So that's a song called Cow Smiles by Kirk Whalum, and those chords are similar to a Sam Smith song. And so it's like a generic sort of pop progression. And I only used the 4 chord tones of each chord, I think. But with that basis, with that kind of understanding of being able to make melodies out of just 4 chords, you can expand so much. So obviously when I actually play gigs, I don't just use those notes. I obviously play a whole lot more, but when the foundation is there, it allows me to feel free. It allows me to even then alter and change. And when I have good understanding or practice going from one chord to the next, I can also say, okay, cool, if I'm going from, in this instance, E flat major 7 to G, dominant 7th sharp 5, what can I do in between that? And I can practice that slowly and add a 5 in, and then before the dominant 3, and then add a 2 before that. And, and I work my way around lots of different scenarios. So when I get to the gig, I'm completely free in my mind. And so now I'm making melodies, I'm outlining chords, I'm playing alterations, and I have more control than just having to have licks as the foundation of my playing. And now, what if I haven't learned enough licks? If you haven't learned enough licks yet, in my case, I don't know that many licks, you'd find yourself stuck. So this really, really helped me get to be playing quicker than having to memorize a billion licks in all 12 keys. And so I would highly recommend sitting down and spending a good few weeks just grinding 4 notes, no matter what genre you play, what genre you plan on playing. This will help you immensely in all of your understanding of music.